another DorkLair collecting video. Today I'm counting down my top 10 Four Horsemen Studios action figures of 2023, including Mythic Legions, Cosmic Legions, Figura Obscura, and special releases. And before we begin, I just want to explain my process a little bit. As you can see, there were 45 figures in 2023. Just absolutely incredible amount of quality and product just pumping out this year. And I just had to come up with a process. So I did like a two-step process. One step is just my gut instinct, and then another step was kind of like using ranking and stats to figure out or calculate my ranking among. So what I did was I looked at all 45 and I said, okay, if I could keep just 10, which 10 of these would I want to keep if I could only keep 10? And that's how I kind of like narrowed it down to my top 10. Then I used these 5 categories to calculate the winners, or the rankings, I should say. So I looked at the categories of visual, like visuals, and how the figure looks, and just the sculpture, the paint, and just how it presents itself on a shelf. Then pop and swappability. Now this is a very me kind of category. Not everybody does this, so it's not necessarily going to be a category everybody agrees on. But I love popping and swapping. That's probably, to me, one of the most signature things about Four Horsemen and Mythic Legions and stuff. So I definitely wanted that to be a category. Another category I have is called hand candy. Some people might focus just on articulation, but to me, it's much more than that. I even have some figures high up on the hand candy list that don't have the best articulation, but it's really about the figures that I just want to hold in my hand, play around with, and mess with, and pose, and just play with and have in my hand. And then my fourth category was lore and character, and this was just all of the surrounding stuff. So it might have to do with how they present the story in the bio. It might have to do with the character's relationship to other characters, some of these Figura Obscuras and how they kind of present their lore and, the mythology or the narrative that goes along with it. All of those things factored into sort of like lore and character. And then my final one was like the intangible, like wow factor, the ones that just were like, blew my mind, super impressed, just kind of hard to put into words what it is, just that intangible wow factor. So for each one of those categories, I took all 10 of my top 10 and then I ranked them. So I ranked the 10 for visual, I ranked the 10 for pop and swap, hand candy, lore, character, and wow factor. So I had these ranks, and then I assigned each rank a value. So a rank of 10 would have received 1 point, 9, 2 points, 8, 3, and so on up the line. So the number 1 got 10 points. And so a character could have gotten up to 50 points depending on where it ranked. Like if it had the top ranking on all 5 categories, it would have received 50 points. And that's what's going to be present in my rankings here when you watch these picks. So let's get into it and start with number 10. So first up, we have the Oleg Thygar Volcatar version from Cosmic Legions. This figure is phenomenal, and it was one of those ones just going into it right away. It was my favorite. When the wave went up for pre-order, I just immediately got latched on to this specific figure, and the details are incredible. This is just got so many cool little paint and sculptural details throughout this entire suit. It does have some unique pieces as well. Like this chest piece here is very unique to this figure. And of course, we've got the various head sculpts and whatnot. I do have some looseness and a couple little nitpicky things that might prevent it from being at the top. In fact, I should probably mention there were a couple figures that I wanted to put in my top 10, but I just couldn't do it because in some ways I consider these lists as recommendations. As much as it's just like my own personal favorites, I do recommend these figures. And so there were a couple that I wanted to put on, but I couldn't quite recommend them because of some QC issues. That is the gray alien Ias Supedian. That one is like pretty much locked up on the chest, and you have to do some surgery, not surgery, but you have to like boil it and stuff to get it loose. And so there's definitely like a little bit of a process with that figure that kind of kept it off this list. And then the other one was Canox Vol. That one has some looseness. I know a lot of people have had some snapped joints and stuff. So again, like I love that figure. I'm, fairly confident in dealing with the issues on those figures, but it's hard for me to put that on a list and say, you should go out and buy this figure, because I think there would be a lot of people frustrated with it. Now, this figure just has some looseness, and it has a joint that pops off fairly easily, the torso. But other than that, it's fine. It's, there's really not a lot of like advanced issues that happen with it. But I love this figure. Fantastic one. Oleg Thygar Volkatar version. At number 9, we have the Xylernian Guard. I was a little surprised that this was as low as number 9, because this really feels like one of my favorite figures of the year. But when I started to like put it in all the different categories and stuff, like it just didn't stack up necessarily with some of the others. Like the wow factor and the lore and stuff, like it's okay, it's fine. But just compared to all the others on the list, it just doesn't stack up. But what this one shines in is hand candy and pop and swap. Like this figure, this is my favorite thing about Legions, is popping and swapping. And like, this is the perfect figure. It's got this beautiful armor, just beautifully painted armor pieces. The arms and the legs just can go on so many different options. One of my favorite looks is to put those arms and legs on the Bardrick figure. It looks so damn good, like so rich, like so many like rich colors and paint applications on that swap. And then the figure itself, just among itself, I mean, you have multiple skirt piece options, you have different weapons, multiple heads, you have the visor, and just all sorts of options just right out of the box. Such a fantastic release for popping and swapping, and just an incredible release. And I'm kind of surprised it was only number 9. At number 8, we have Vorga from Cosmic Legions. Shout out to the very first 1.0 female figure, and they hit an absolute home run with this one. This figure is incredible. This is one of those, like, I so highly recommend picking it up. I have had no issues at all with this one. I know, like I said, there's been a few issues with some of these cosmic figures, but this one is solid. It's just so nice, and it's got a ton of unique pieces. It's got a really just awesome head sculpts going on here. Incredible torso. It's got like the tattoo thing going on. There's just a lot of really good stuff going on with this figure. I absolutely recommend it. Vorga, number 8. Number 7, we've got the Valiant Knight. Now, this was my first number 1. So this was the first place in hand candy, as I'm sure a lot of people who got this figure will absolutely agree. This is pure hand candy. At Legions Con this year, people were just passing this thing around and playing with it. The articulation is improved. It moves really well. It just feels so nice in hand. It's also a pop and swap dream. Like, this figure is a champion when it comes to popping and swapping, and just, I mean, even just taking those arms and legs and adding them to some other character just for the increased range is an incredible option. Comes with multiple heads, like, so within its own package, again, it's one of those ones that it's got some good options in on its own. And even though the visual is 10th place, it's still a great looking figure. It's just 10th among the top 10 best, right? But so the armor is painted really nicely. It's got some nice little gold accents and some great accessories and so on. Lore-wise, it's got a cool story because I feel like it shouts out the fans, kind of, but, you know, like, there's not a ton going on with it. And wow factor is good. Like, on its own, the wow factor is okay. But for me, the wow factor was really that experience at Legions Con of it being like a surprise drop and all that. Eventually, it's not going to be that big of a wow kind of figure once people just all kind of get it in hand, and it, you know, it's expected to come. But overall, this figure is awesome, and it was one of the ones where I was a little surprised it wasn't a little higher on my list. When I kind of like in my head was making the list versus what my calculations came out to be, it didn't quite match to what I expected. At number 6, we're starting to get into a little bit of my heavy bias because I am actively involved in the Figura Obscura line where I get to reveal these figures. I'm lucky enough to be a part of this line, and so I tend to have a soft spot for these figures, obviously, but because of the nature of the line and the nature of my own career and stuff, they really hit home, especially on the lore and character side of things. These Figura Obscura figures are like top tier when it comes to story and just the way, not just like the original story, but the way that the Four Horsemen, between the artwork, the sculpture, the accessories, and then the copy, and then sometimes including the little storybooks with it. Like it just all comes together story wise really, really well. And so these tend to be up there in the lore and character. You also have the wow factor of this one, just all of a sudden, a brand new body that you've never before seen, like in hand, was incredible. Beautiful soft goods. Not the best hand candy because of the soft goods. Like it's one of those figures, it's fussy. With when you have a lot of cloth like this and you're moving it around, it can be fussy. But the overall, like once you get it up there, the visual and the wow factor really hits home with a figure like this. If you don't have this one yet, I highly recommend it. Even if you don't care anything about Poe, the figure itself, like pull those robes off and you've got just a crazy body under there. Awesome figure, Mask of the Red Death number 6. And now we've crossed that threshold into the top 5 with the Gorgo Attila 2-pack from the War of the Aetherblade Mythic Legions Tactics Wave. This is the pack that all year long, whenever anybody would say, where do I start? What should I get for like my first Mythic Legions? And the fact that like this has kind of been sitting in stock on like Big Bad Toy Store and it's been like less than the retail price on eBay. I've been recommending this set because it's, character wise, lore and stuff, it's top tier, right? You have two of the main guys, bad guy, good guy, classic remakes of the first wave figures, and just a ton of new sculpture, incredible soft goods. I mean, these things are home run kind of figures. When I first started my list, I thought this was going to be like 2 or 3. I was a little surprised when I got everything in there and all the different calculations and stuff. Hand candy brought them down a little bit because, again, with all those cloth goods and these heavy weapons and things, like posing can be a pain. Like they're not like the most fun figures to pose around and stuff, but visually they are so good. And it's a really nice wow factor, just a great pack. If you're watching this video and you don't have any Mythic Legions yet and you're thinking about starting, start here. That is definitely my recommendation. Grab these and lock these in before it's too late. Number 4, getting close to the top here, Sligor Gravekeeper Cosmic Legions Deluxe Builder Set. People have been saying it since this set went up for pre-order. This is the Barbarian Builder Set or the Deluxe Knight Builder Set of the Cosmic Legions stuff, and it definitely lived up to that high expectation. This thing is just absolutely loaded with stuff. I mean, this is the number 1 on my list for popping and swapping because it just right out of the box, it's got so much going on. The figure itself is sturdy as hell. It's just hand candy. It's fun. It's not as posable as something like the Valiant Knight, but it is just so much fun to play around with and to just mess with, and it's pure hand candy. Amazing figure. I mean, it's also got like some awesome visuals, like just looks wise. It's got some great paint schemes and stuff. So it kind of like, it's not super low in any category, which really kept it pretty high on the list. Though I was surprised, I guess because visually not quite as interesting as some of these other ones, that just kept it a little bit lower than the rest. But 4th place is pretty high. At number 3, we've got the Ghost of Jacob Marley from Figura Obscura. And again, I have a heavy preference for this line because of personal reasons, but this figure is incredible. I mean, again, this year, they just really changed what my expectation was for Figura because they've really started just putting tons and tons of new tooling and new parts and new pieces into these. It's got a lot of new stuff. I mean, that torso, the coat, the skirt, even the feet, the boots, all that, all of these accessories, all the chains. And then you have like visually like this, just such a high end visual figure with the fading of the transparency on the coat. And you have that very like phantom like blue going on throughout it. Contrast that with all of the heavy darkness of all of those chains and that harness and the safe and everything. Not to mention, I'm still keeping the secret here, but there's a really good thing in that safe that does factor in to this figure, especially visually. Hand candy, not so great. It's fiddly, all those chains. It's a lot to work with on there, but lore and character, one of the greatest stories ever written, and the wow factor is just amazing. So no surprise here for me that this is way up there on my top 10 list. Jacob Marley, number 3. Number 2, Highwarden Slog. I am not at all surprised about this one being my number 2. I knew going into it was going to be high. I love this figure so much. It actually was a surprise when I initially reviewed it a few months ago, and it just blew me away. And I had already had it in hand as a test shot, but just getting the final product in hand, really moving it around, I wasn't going to mess too much with the test shots. And on top of that, all of that detailed paint. Like, this is a piece of art. Like, this is, it's a crazy space meatball, wacky piece of art, but it is an awesome piece of art. I've been saying to the guys, like, you should definitely have this thing out at Designer Con this year. It's one of those figures that the wow factor is just next level. And visually, to me, this figure just hits so many marks, that particularly the sculpt and the paint, like the sculpt and the paint on this thing and the design of the character and all that stuff. The lore is awesome. Like, the story about this particular character and the next level storytelling they're doing with the Cosmic Legions, all that stuff just blew me away. Such a unique figure. Incredible. Highwarden Slog. Number 1, probably no surprise to anyone, is the Figura Obscura Sun Wukong the Monkey King. This thing hits on every category, like every single category. It might not be first in every single category, but it did really well in all of them, and especially the wow factor. Like, everything from just opening it up and being like, holy cow, they did this particular character, to just all of the artwork, the box, the packaging, the figure itself. Like, this is the one that changed it for Figura. Like, this was the one where you're like, holy crap, this is like all new stuff. Like, so all new sculpting, it just like, it really like was a statement piece from Four Horsemen, going like way outside of the typical, kind of monstrous or, holiday types of Figura Obscura type releases. As far as the lore is concerned, they did an incredible job presenting the character and staying faithful to the story. This was a great experience for me. I don't have a lot of experience with the Monkey King, so I was able to learn a lot about this character in terms of just playing with the figure. Yes, it has a lot of cloth goods, but there's nothing tricky about these cloth goods. They're all attached, and there's nothing fiddly about the cloth goods. Like, this figure, just pure hand candy. It's amazing. It's so fun to pose, tons of swapping options, and not just among itself, and it has a ton of different head face plates and different looks and options, but among other characters, like taking these ape hands and the monkey hands and the monkey head and putting those on other characters and other figures, taking this armor and trying it out on different ones. Incredible. Just every single category, it just hit a home run. I went into it thinking it was going to be my number 1, and I came out of it calculations wise as my number 1. So no surprise there at all. This is a figure that I cannot wait. Like they've been doing the different variations of the Figura Obscura figures. I'm assuming that all the 2023 figures will get like a retailer wave in 2024. I don't have any inside info on that, but that's just my theory, is that the 3 releases from 2023 will get variant releases. Maybe those will go up for pre-order in early 2024, something like that. But I cannot wait to see specifically what they do with the variant on the Monkey King, assuming they do a second release. I mean, just so good. And this year has been absolutely incredible. There's a lot of other figures that could have made it on this list, but it's a top 10 and there could only be 10. So I had to choose my favorites, right? I had to pick them. And I hope you enjoyed my ranking system. I took the 10 favorite, like my 10 main favorite, and then among them, I ranked them. And so, there might be some off the list that might have beat another one on, one of those specific rankings. But overall, these were my 10 favorite figures. Let me know in the comments below what you think of that ranking system. Also, I want to know your list. Tell me your top 10 Mythic Legions, Cosmic Legions, Figura Obscura, Four Horsemen Studios figures of 2023. And until next time, may the Force be with you.